So with that, I'd like to introduce Robert Kowalski.
Hey. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I will say namaste, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays, whatever that means to you. This is a great honor and a blessing, and I feel great gratitude for being invited here. The energy and the spirits in the room are powerful. You can feel it. That is a wonderful stained glass window. The colors are calling me in, and you're going to hear, I'm going to tell you a love story. That's what I'm going to share with you. It's a love story on multi-levels. Number one, I have a profound love for Jesus and his stories, not necessarily the church. They lost me a long time ago, and I like to open with this fact that I had 12 years of private Catholic education. That was 8 years too many. After 4 years, I got it. Thank you. I got the basics. The stories, the parables, the simplicity was wonderful, but I got very lost in the church and the ceremonies and all that. Somehow it turned into totally different messages, in my opinion, than what he was trying to impart. You'll hear that as we go. But I want to do this with a little bit of history. I want to thank my mother, Betty Kowalski, who was a profound Catholic, went to church every Sunday, front row, pew, all dressed up. We had the whole experience. And she told me when I was a young man, if you go to church every day during Lent, a great miracle will happen. And she was and I loved her so much. So I said, sure, I'll try it one time. And it was a lot of church for a guy like me. And all I can tell you, the great miracle was I didn't have to go anymore after it was over. It just was a journey that the confinement of it and the restriction of the dogma, Johnny Harris, my dear friend, thanks for coming. Kind of got lost on me early. So I'm dedicating this to her. She would be like, Bobby, where do you come up with this stuff? That's what she would say, but she would be very proud of this. The basic storyline, as we said, Jesus comes back as a woman. Well, here's why. In my opinion, I'm asking this question. And I'm a very unlikely person to be asking this question again when I'm not religious at all. But it's an observation from being raised with a strong mother, 7 kids, both sides of me, 2 sisters, both gay sisters, and had to fight for their sexuality and to be understood in the world, and quite a while back. And I saw those struggles, but I also saw how profound they were in every avenue of life, in any way you can think, as far as reading, writing, talent. And I also saw the repression, the male repression was just obvious to me, that it was constant with the leadership of the Pope and the cardinals. It's all male dominated. And I always thought, well, geez, my sisters are way more spiritual and way more advanced than I am. My mother's way more devout. Why don't they have an equal place at the table? This is early questions that just kind of dawned on me. And I will say it this way. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not trying to start a new religion. I'm not angry about it. The church, I have no really anger with anybody. As a matter of fact, I'm a novice at writing books. I did poetry, but when I wrote this, I had some coaching because my coach said, you don't have an antagonist. And to have a good story, you got to have a bad guy. And I'm not mad at anybody. I don't want a bad guy. Well, you got to have one. So, that's how naive I was when I started this thing 10 years ago. So it's been a long journey. And the basics of the story asks that question, why not a woman pope? Why not a woman prophet? Obviously the goddess is rising now, if you want to say it that way. You can see that in the earth, and it's everywhere. The Greta Thunbergs of the world, if that's her last name. These wonderful spirits, women are becoming empowered more and more in all positions. Business, spiritual, leadership, my friend Lori. There's a lot of talented women, and we need that energy badly. I am kind of here as a spiritual warrior. I'm at the point in my life, I'm older, 68, and business has been of interest, and it's fine, but this is what I want to leave behind is I love our planet. I think our planet's in dire trouble. I think environmentally, the fires in Australia, the fires in California, to me, it's not political. It's not climate change. It's not Republican. It's not Democratic. It's reality. And how I like to say that is, we can have two people in a kitchen arguing whether you want pancakes or eggs for breakfast, and meanwhile, the whole house is burning up. So what I'm trying to say is I think we need to unite. And I say it this way, that the rise of women does not mean the fall of men. But I really think it's a very important message that we unite and we start really considering our environment, our home, and take all of our energies and turn it towards how we can help heal and just live with more respect on this planet, our home. So that's a part of the love story. There's so many different levels here. But that to me is the most crucial one. And my friend John, he has a place up north. He loves nature. Walden's Pond, those things have always spoke to me, in that if you want to be healed and you want to know the truth, go out and spend some time in nature. I'm sure you all know that, but that's really where the answers are. That's where your peace will come from. JC, my character, profoundly loves nature. The animals love her. She's a shaman, really. To give you an example, if I wrote another one, it'd be Buddha rides a bike. So it shows you it's not about just Jesus. But I think it's an important tale to tell. And the question is simply, I look at that painting of the profound painting, or the stained glass. Jesus came here in sandals and a robe, walked the outsides of the churches, the Pharisees, all the establishments, with the outcasts like me and Johnny. And I was a wild kid, trust me, just crazy wild when I was young. But he loved everybody. He judged nobody. His simple lessons were just that. And, he healed people, the lepers, and he fed people with miracles, and he just did some regular stuff too. I don't always think it's all mystical. He just had compassion, tolerance, and love, non-judgment. Somehow, and I've been blessed to travel, and just got back from Spain about a month ago. Somehow I was touring cathedrals, and they're beautiful. Trust me, they're beautiful cathedrals in Spain and Italy. But they are more gold, there's more silver, there's more money in those cathedrals than you can imagine. And if you know the history of where that came from, the Incas conquering, taking it, stealing it, really, and killing for it in the name of God. And you look at that, and then I walked outside of all of these churches, and there were beggars. Every time there were beggars right out the steps going, "Can you help me?" And I always try to a little bit, but I've always had this simple man, sell a couple paintings, sell a couple of these gold. Seriously, there'd be gold inlay, the size of that. You could feed the whole city for months and months and months, for years. Those kind of simple observations are really what led me to write this book. Just really nothing more than, where's the disconnect here? If Jesus came back right now, ideally to me, be a woman, because we need that nurturing, feminine goddess energy, I think. But if he came back even as he was supposedly then, and walked into the Sistine Chapel, and walked into the Vatican, and he saw that the world's largest art collection, they pay no tax. It sounds like I'm taking the church on. I don't want, that's a big animal. I don't want to take them on, but I'm making an observation that he would say, really, you got from, my little stories of walking around and tolerance, compassion, never judge anybody, love everybody, don't make assumptions, and you turn it into this, the world's largest landowner in business. You could not have missed my message any further. How did you miss it? And that's another thing I'm trying to do in my book, is I used to be a painter. I put myself through college in painting. And you'd take varnish, and you would try, you'd varnish through to get back to the real grain, just the natural grain, and then you could start over and stain the wood. And I kind of trying to do that. It's just, let's remove all these layers of varnish, miscommunication, misunderstanding, this division that religions create. You know, you think about, you got Lutheran, you got Catholic, you got Baptist. To me, they're all football teams. Who's, you know, hey, who's the football? No, mine's right, yours isn't. You're close. But you don't believe that the Pope is infallible. Well, the Catholics do. You know, Lutherans, all that just like, to me, makes no sense. It makes no sense at any level that we would be competing with each other for, you know, the message of love and selling different messages and think ours is a little better and a little different. And that's another one of my core, you know, kind of statements is, it's right here. It's everybody in this room is a god or a goddess. It's 100% is what I believe. Everybody here has the ability to change the world, change their world, change the world. They have as much power as any prophet has ever had. You all have that. Jesus said that. As I do, so can you, and even more. These are his words, not mine. I'm no Bible scholar. But what he was saying is that it's not that complex. You have everything you need to live a good life, a loving life, a non-judgmental, compassionate life inside you. And we all think it's always out there. We're always grasping for the golden ring in business. We're always looking for that spiritual prophet to save us. You know, it's always another different mate, maybe marriage, another guy or girl will change it, a different car will make me happy. All these externals that really fulfill you for very short times in all of us. And I think that's a thing we have to start thinking about. I know you do wonderful work here with meditation and bringing that out. That's all I've been hearing all morning. This is a good spot. And this is the right message. Inclusiveness, it couldn't be better. And so I'm very excited about that. To be here, this is my first time speaking, so if I'm fumbling a little bit, that's what it is. I've never done this before. On this message, I've done business talks, talked to Japanese business people in translation. It was a little easier than this, to tell you the truth, because, you know, it was quite an experience. I do want to leave, and I'm going to leave some time for questions. I do want to refer to my notes here. Just bear with me, because my mind being somewhat creative jumps around on me. Okay. I want to tell you the story of where I had a disconnect with the Catholic Church, my first one. Confirmation. Who was a Catholic here or still is? Well, man, we got a big group, so you all follow this. Confirmation is 10, 11 years old, roughly in there. You are supposedly of age and you're aware and you get to pick your own name for the first time. You get to own that and you get confirmed in the church. But one of the great edicts or statements is that the Catholics always has, there's only one way to heaven, and that's through Jesus. It's the only way you can get there. Well, there's two side stories. I took the name James, Robert John James, because my dear brother was my hero. He was 6 years older. He's the one that passed in the plane accident, and he is the Kowalski of the Kowalski markets. That was my brother who started that business, so if that name sounds familiar. Now my sister-in-law, Mary Ann, owns it. And I'm, part of the family, and not necessarily in the business as much. I do the real estate development for them. I'm a broker, so I look for new sites. So I'm, involved still, but not in operations or anything. So anyway, I grew up in a Highland Park, which is a Jewish neighborhood, predominantly. My best friends were Jewish that I played baseball with and hung out with. Way better talents than me, better athletes. They're just, just friends. And when I was told by the priest that they can't go to heaven because they don't believe Jesus is the prophet, I said, I don't want to go. I don't want to get confirmed. I didn't really realize that. And this is at 10 years old, and it was a big deal. He's like, oh, geez, get the holy water out. And, they took me back to my parents and said, we want to explain this and talk about it. And it was quite an experience, but in my heart, it was that simple. The simple man, it's just that simple. It's like, why? What's different about my friend Paul is playing first base and I'm shortstop? He can't go to heaven because of a belief system that his church tells him? Again, this is where I challenge, just common sense. You don't have to make this stuff hard. You just look in your heart and go, that makes no sense. It makes no sense on any level. And I have a lot of born-again Christian friends. God bless them. And again, I don't judge, I just observe. I think it's a simple way to find a path without too many questions. But I always ask them that. I say, the old story, if you're in a jungle and you've never been exposed to Jesus and all that, you don't get to go to heaven because you didn't know that. We talk a lot about that. I'm always trying to understand how a Jesus-loving, traditional person can not see the separation that brings with those beliefs of it's got to be this way. I'm sorry, and they just don't know better, and we'll bring them to the light. Well, I can tell you another historical fact. If you look at the missionaries, there's some wonderful people that have done wonderful work, and there still is in the Catholic Church. I 100% believe that. But there's been some horrific, abusive missions that have. And you look at Hawaii and what happened there, and the smallpox, and James Michener's novel Hawaii will tell you that whole story. You look at the genocides of the American Native Indian, and what happened there government-wise, and then some of it in the name of God, in the name of Christianity. You can look at the Crusades, you can pick anything out of history, and there's a lot of abuse, and there's a lot of killing in the name of God, and that's another obvious one. If you read that, go, does that make any sense in any level? But any prophet would think that's okay. I mean, any prophet, put any name on it, that's okay to kill in the name of God. So that's going on right now. It's going on right now, all, in different spots in the Middle East, whatever, here, in certain ways. And I just want to keep challenging us and tell a simple story of love, a simple story of equity, equitable women power, non-judgment. I do it at a high school level, at a very young level. Yeah, they're in high school. I try to make it connectable. They play soccer on the team called the Winds. JC and Maggie, I use all the Catholic characters. Magaline, Maggie, JC, best friends. Maggie's of the earth. Maggie has got the tattoo, and she just loves her Corvette, and she's from a wealthy family. And JC's this Buddha, spiritual, deep thinking nature person that tries to help Maggie find her choices. And there's a whole group of friends that are involved in this story. And the core story is, the business part of it is Whale Mart is coming to town. And I actually made sure that I could use that name. I didn't want, Walmart suing me. But so Whale Mart's coming to the small town of Serenity. And Serenity could be anywhere in USA. And they're going to take over the economy. They're just going to devastate all the small businesses. And it's just a typical little town. And her dad, JC's dad, Joe, has, my friend Joe, has a hardware store. And he's just a small businessman, and you buy a sink, he'll put it in for free. And if something doesn't work, he'll come fix it. He's not going to charge you. That's the community, how they should be, how they were, how they could be. And Whale Mart's coming in, and they're sneaking in, and they're buying the land, and this stuff happens all the time, really. And kind of doing deals with the mayor and the political hookups to take over and build this, large 100,000 square foot retail experience that'll wipe out all of these small businesses. That's a core story. I'm a passionate small business person. That is what our country was built on. It's what everything in the world, eventually, they all started with a small business. Somebody with a cart, I got some apples. Someone that had a talent, I can make pictures or stained glass, or I'm an artist. All of that is how we got everything we have. And now I personally see us going the wrong way of putting everything in the big old box and making it as cheap as possible. And most of it's made by labor that's not treated or paid very well. And you know those stories. And so that's one of my, reasons I wrote the book, so I want to address that issue. I also try to tell the stories of, kind of sportsmanship, in a sense of why Jesus' story, be a good competitor. You can play sports, you play football, play whatever you want, but have honor in it, have integrity in it. Be a good sport. If you get beat, shake their hand, which I love that they do that in hockey at Stanley Cup. They don't do it in football after they're all kicking each other and stuff. Some of them will hug each other. But those kind of things, I'm like, why can't we take the JC messages, Jesus' basic messages, and modernize them? And that's what I really did with this book. I wanted to modernize those messages so we can apply them to, like our friend over here, young people growing up. And the other part I do in this is I have a workbook that goes with the story. So at the end of the story, and you can find it on my website, meetjc.com. It's a free workbook you'll print out. And it asks you all kinds of questions, so, kind of relating to each chapter. And what I'm trying to do is, this is my personal goal. I'd love to get to this in schools. I'd like to see it in book clubs. Anybody out there want to be a test for me in schools? Because I think, having come from 12 years of Catholic education, my religious classes were very boring. They were just nothing really new. They didn't, let's talk about Buddha. Hey, that'd have been cool. Let's talk about that. How's that different than Jesus? It was all the same stories over and over. So I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great to create a new dialogue, and especially with young girls, as the leader, and have that in classes where, okay, y'all know the real story of Jesus. We can revisit that, but here's this story. How are they different? How are they parallel? And I think it'd be a really good conversation. I think that truly I believe that we're in crisis right now, not only environmentally, but definitely mental health-wise. The opioid addictions, suicide rates. I don't want to be dark here, but that's all real. And it's all, ramping up and getting no better. It's getting worse. And I totally 100% believe that's because we're disconnected from our spirits. Somehow we lost our spirits, here in America for sure. And I will say we're the most disconnected, in my opinion. I think because we have all these different football teams and everybody moves away. Where you go to some other cultures, they, truly, I'm not endorsing anything, but I went to Tangiers, and I spent a short time there, but I was very impressed by my guide, which I hired because I wanted to see the city properly in certain areas and stuff, and he could get me there. But praying 3 times a day, it's part of their culture. Every day they live their spirituality. And you see that in other religions, the Native Americans, with the songs, the sweats, and all of that. What I was raised as, I'm not judging this place, was every Sunday, 10 o'clock, get dressed, do your hour, and you're good, for the week, right? And Saturday night, you could be crazy partying and all the sins in the world, because, my parents had a good time. I remember that, and they're all in the basement playing Pin the Tail on the Donkey and all that, and they're all, hey. And it was crazy fun, drinking and all, and I'm watching that, and then the next morning, we all had to sit front, all dressed up, and do the hour, right? And then you're purged, then you're good, then you're forgiven. That stuff, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And I write a poem about that in the book. The other one is you could go to confession. So you can do anything you want. These are stuff that I just go, man, what a gimmick. You go to confession, you can tell your story, ask for forgiveness, and you can do it again next week. Now, this is how I was. I lied about my lies in confession, but I just added another lie. So I lied, Father, 7 times. Well, I put 8 because I'm lying right now. But I got my thing, then go say your rosary, and you're good, right? That stuff to me is like, whew. The Crusaders, they could buy their way back to heaven. Anybody that, if you read the history, my son's a history major, if your history will tell you that too, that they could pay enough to the church. And if you paid enough, you got absolution. Didn't matter what you did. So all that to me is, I think the real message here, and I had a kind of a vision. I'm telling you, I'm supposed to tell this story. I'm the most unlikely one, but I'm supposed to. Because we were talking that if a woman wrote this, it may not be received as well, be feminist, kind of thing, which is sad, but the world we live in, it may be perceived differently. That for me telling it with the simple person that I am, and definitely not religious, and a little hoodlum as a young man, and now, credible person somewhat in my adulthood, I think I'm the right one to tell the story. I know that I was chosen to tell the story. I was driving down a street that all started this simply. This is where this began, is I saw a van go by me, on the street, long hair like Jesus, that kind of look. And I was in the back and the side, and I go, that looks like Jesus driving a minivan. That was the original name of the book. And I said, that's exactly what it looks like. My friend Wes always said, you should have kept that name. And then I got closer to it, and I saw it was a woman, and there were 4 kids in the car, and they're going to soccer. You know, there's a soccer sticker on there, and I looked at that, and she looked tired. She did. She looked tired, and it was like, oh, man. And I just had this vision of here's the real Christian, here's the real Christ, here's the real work, here's the real church, this woman with, you know, more than likely got working a job, taking the kids to soccer, taking care of the house, you know, married or not, or a single mom, and all of those responsibilities, but doing it well and doing it with love and doing it with, you know, the nurturing heart. You know, we are different. I'm going to tell you, men and women are different. I have been gravitating since I was a kindergarten. I would go play with the women. They'd like, yeah, I got so treated so well. You know, I just did. I'm like, here, you can have a cup of tea or whatever they were doing. They were just really treated me nice. Guys, we had to go fight, wrestle, you know, all this stuff. I'm like, that's too much work. I don't want to do all that. So I go over and hang out in that side. So the point is, I've known the healing powers, the nature, nurturing, goddess energy my whole life. And I celebrate that. And that's why I saw in the van, and I said, you know what, that's what we need. Back to the basics again. Forget this church, all this, you know, elaborate, you know, ceremonies and the Pope and, you know, send your money in and, it drives me crazy. Well, I went there to the Sistine Chapel. I don't know if anybody have been there, Cathedral? You get dumped into the gift shop when you're done, right? I mean, I don't know if you remember that, but it's extraordinary. Let me just tell you, it's extraordinary. The art is extraordinary. The Sistine Chapel is extraordinary. I loved it. You know, Michelangelo and Raphael, and you're just, wow. But you get dumped into the gift shop. And you can get your Bible, you can get your Pope on a rope, soap. You know, it's like, that's how it felt to me. And then I get outside the gates, and I get back into the city, and a block away, there's poverty. A block away, you can find, there's kind of old, and there's beggars, and they're lost, and you know, and I just keep thinking, you know, well, this is, Jesus would go, I think we missed it here. I better refer to my notes. I want to ask some few questions, too, and see if you have any feedback. Bear with me here. Did them. Normally, I'm told that I talk too much. So the money changers, that's another one. I'm kind of on this. Every time I do speak, even to one or two people, it's always different. I don't really do notes well, as you can tell. I do free wing it a lot. So today I can see I'm on a money, you know, the church and the traditional church theme, so I'm going to go with it. So the one time I remember this, I love this story. Jesus comes into the synagogue or church, and there's money changers in there, and they're selling doves, and they're selling offerings, and you buy here, and then you go in and offer it, and that's great. You get absolved, and you throw it. You all know the story? Some of you Catholics do. The only time he gets angry. He gets so angry, he tips the tables over, he throws everything out, and he says, get out of my Father's house. There is no place for this in my Father's house. The money and selling and all of that. That's the only time you really see him angry in all his stories. So he's telling you, he's telling us, he's telling, this is not what we're about. Now, I want to be very clear here. It does not mean like this. Look how beautiful this is here, but how simple it is. It's very connectable. It's a very beautiful place. And to gather a donation, that makes sense to me here. It makes sense to me in a lot of places. It doesn't make sense to me in these great cathedrals, where I know for a fact that that gold could feed all these people outside. And also, in studying some of this, these wealthy business people, they bought their shrines in these cathedrals. They get their own little cathedral because they gave X amount of dollars. And it was all dollar driven. If you give this much, you get this big a little cathedral, you get this little of your own little prayer place. And so, it was all kind of led that way, which is totally different than Jesus' message. I think JC, in her gentle goodness, and here's the thing I'll tell you, I see this as a series possibly, because there's a lot of stories, because it does kind of stop quickly at high school. She gets her van, so now she can drive her minivan. That's one of the last scenes. I think that, to me, the mission for all of us, and it's this simple. You don't have to do elaborate works. You don't have to do, $10 million and get your little cubby and you're saved, because that ain't going to work, I can guarantee you. It's as simple as just being kind. I mean, how often have you seen that Facebook or whatever? Just be kind. If you can't be anything else, be kind. And it's pick up a piece of paper. When you walk by in the street and you see a gum wrapper or a tissue and it's not yours, oh, I ain't touching that. Well, pick it up. You're not going to die from it, more than likely. Put that away. You may, but not hoping that. So that's love for the earth, right? Say hi to a stranger. I do it all the time. 8 out of 10. Hi, how are you? 2 will look at me like, who are you and why are you talking to me? That's okay. I don't need to get something back. Those kind of little things, Be kind to your friends in school. And don't bully people. And don't make fun of people. And try to walk in their shoes. Don't make quick judgments, snap judgments. Political year now drives me crazy. There's an old saying, a Native American saying, it's 2 wings on the same bird. It's Democrat, Republican. To me, it's all the same. None of it makes sense. I don't like any of them. So it makes my life real easy. Because I don't believe in that. I vote. I'm active. I've been very involved. So I'm not saying don't be involved. Don't be, you should be a citizen. But I just can't buy into this bickering, And when I write my check for taxes, it makes me crazy that what we're paying for. That's all kind of part of the journey here, is where did we get so lost? And the little, this is God right here. This place is God. This is the right work. This is everything that I believe in, this place. And I commend you for that. I didn't know much about it before I came. But the way I've been received, the inclusiveness, the tolerance here, the non-judgment, everybody's welcome. We don't care if you're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, nobody cares. And what's your story? And it's looking for your heart, looking to breathe, be healthier. This is it. I hope you're very proud of this, because honest to God, I'm just celebrating this for you. This is what, if every church was this, we would have a way better world, a way better life, and we'd have a community that loves each other and can have different opinions and, celebrate those. Celebrate the differences. They don't separate. They shouldn't separate. They should be celebrated. What can I learn from you? You're different than me, rather than you're different than me. The other part I don't want to miss here is I'm a profound lover of Native Americans. I was blessed 20 years ago to meet a gentleman named Bear. Bear is a Metawakanton elder. He taught me the sacred ways of the sweat lodge. He taught me the pipe ceremony. And he took me under his wings. And, I, as a young boy, grew up in the Mississippi River. I used to play for hours by myself, playing Nature Boy. My dad called me Nature Boy, because that's my deal. And I always loved Crazy Horse. I don't know if you know the story of Crazy Horse. He's a very interesting man, mystic warrior, Lakota, and he was involved in Custer's Last Stand. Fascinating man. He was a small, quiet man, but he had this ability to dematerialize himself, they say. There are witnesses that have written that he would go in the middle of battle, and he should have been getting hit with arrows and bullets, and they went through him. I mean, that's actually been witnessed. And he knew he had that ability. He wore one little rock in his ear, and he was loved his people, and he was loved by his people. That always interests me. He just always called to me. So on my own, I went and did a vision quest. No, I had no training by anybody then. I just like, man, I'm the middle child of 7 kids. My parents are going, where's Bobby? Man, nobody knows. Probably down the river, you know. I mean, you know, back in those days too, I'm talking a long time ago, 40, 50 years ago, you could go for the day. It was safe. You'd go to the playground all day, you could do whatever. It was a different environment. And so they weren't bad parents. They just like, whatever, he'll come home for dinner, he likes to eat. So I did a vision quest, which was phenomenal. And I got a book at the library, and I read how you're supposed to do it. And back in the days, about 30 years ago, I was a state handball champion, so I was in very good shape. I ran marathons, whole different time in my life. And I fasted for the 3 days. If you ever heard of a vision quest, anybody here? Yeah, a lot of very awake culture here, of course. And I fasted, and then you exhaust yourself through exercise, and you collapse and you get a vision. And so I went out in the woods, in the middle of nowhere, by a river, did all the work, did the 3 days, fasting, and I ran, and I was running through a woods, and this is true, all this is true story, and I tripped through this tight woods, and I was like this Mars warrior. I was so into, you know, and I was a street fighter. I was a kid, just goofy. And I got all cut up, and I fell in the mud, and I look up, and there's a deer staring, looking right at me, and he looks at me, he goes, take the path of least resistance. And that's all it said in my head. And I'm looking at him, I got mud on my face, I'm bleeding. And I got up in this almost Buddha state, meditative state, and I started running. And all of a sudden, the whole forest opened up. It was so cool. And I was no drugs or, I mean, this is all natural. And where I couldn't see a path, all of a sudden I saw a path. And it was their deer path down to the water, but it was kind of, you know, hidden in some place. But I tripled my speed and I ran through this woods untouched, you know, without the scratches and everything. Where before I was like banging through, and I banged through. So that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2. I had 3 of them. I go down to the river. I jump in the lake. And there's nobody around, so I just stripped down and I went and cleaned myself up. I come back, 10 minutes flopping around like an otter. I felt like I turned into an otter. I got an animal thing. I really do. I got the animals and me, we're really close. And I had this otter energy going, I'm playing and having fun, flipping around. And I come back, and there on my shorts were laying there was a rattlesnake. And I looked it up because I was in an area that I said, they don't have rattlesnakes here. And I looked it up and yes, they do. So because I'm like, maybe you just flipped out. So there's a rattlesnake. I'm going, oh, geez, I'm sitting here, I had nothing on. And I'm like, oh, but there's nobody around for miles, so it's stupid. But I'm going, I had to get my shorts, and I had to. So I pick a stick up and I start poking him. And the more I poke the rattlesnake, the more it rattles. And he's doing all the rattle stuff. And I'm poking him, and finally he stops, and he looks at me and goes, the more you poke, the more I'll rattle. Lesson number 2. I live with these things. Think about that. If you poke your friend, and I'm going to get them, they're going to get you, and then they got to get you, no. All that's, all right? Great lesson. 3rd lesson. After that, I go back on the hill and I start running again in this field. And I turned into a fox. This is my fox thing. I was just like, this is fun, man. I'm moving, I'm jumping, like, you know how foxes do. And I'm having a great time, and I come to this mountain. It probably was a native mountain. I don't really know that, but I just fell down and exhausted again. And all of a sudden I hear this big screech over my head. And it's this giant hawk. It wasn't an eagle, it was a hawk. And I'm looking in front of me, and you know, there's very little grass, there's a little mouse. And all of a sudden when I saw the mouse, and then I heard the hawk, and the mouse started going, getting really erratic and scared. And I felt so sad for that mouse. And I started crying. I did. I started, oh my God, save the mouse. The hawk came down and got the mouse, circled around me with the mouse, and said, don't be sad. It's the way of the world. It's how the world works. Someday I will feed, right? Shakespeare, I don't know, the famous, you know, fish, you catch a fish, you catch a man, because, you know, you catch a worm, the worms eat us, and we land. It's all a cycle. And so I'm a profound believer in that you got to survive here. Unless you're vegan, God bless you. You know, I think that's wonderful, but I got no chance at that. And I'm pretty honest about it. I just don't. But, you know, so there is a cycle of life. You will feed and be fertilizer. And it's okay, dust to dust, right? It's okay. So it's okay that this hawk had to eat, and it keeps the population. There's a balance here. So those are my 3 lessons that, I've used my whole life. I use it in business. I use it everywhere. So I highly recommend a vision quest for anybody that ever wants to do one. I bring this all up because Bear is honored in my book. He passed now, but he called me a 2-legged. We got the 2-leggeds and the 4-leggeds. 4-leggeds are all the animals. The 2-leggeds are us. And he saw no color. He saw no division. He didn't care that I was, middle child, kid from Catholic background. He just loved me, and he showed me the ways, and he brought me into the sacred ways, and it was profound. If you ever sweat, everybody does sweat, led by properly. I did a warrior sweat with a Lakota, descended a crazy horse, and it just about killed me. I mean, it's a whole nother level of your traditional sweat. You do come out purified. There's no question. If you get a chance, do one. You come out purified, you come out, you just clean, and not only your soul, your body, obviously, and then after you celebrate. And I used to bring chickens, I had a little grocery store, I'd bring chickens. This is my own. And we go gather in a little spot, and we eat and share stories. Profound experience. Crazy Hearts had a vision. He said, there'll be 7 generations of pain, sadness, disconnect. And after the 7 generations, when white man and the natives see together, they come together in their beliefs, the earth will start healing. And I believe we're here now. We're at this point. If you notice, there is a lot of kind of nostalgia for Native and the beliefs. And if you think about Native American beliefs, it's very much the same as Buddhism. Respect for all animals, respect for everybody has a place. And, think about that. I always say, if you want to know the truth, look at the consistencies in the message. So Buddhism, Native America, they're saying the same things. There's probably truth in that. Respect all life. So Bear makes a profound impact on JC. Bear teaches her to do her vision quest. She gets her message and who and what she's supposed to do. All of these different sub-stories are in my story. But I tell without anger, hate, not mad at anybody. I tell it in a younger way, and I hope that you will take a look at it. I have some books out there, but I don't know what else to say. It's just, my goal here's my goal. I'd like to get into a school. I'd like to see that happen. I really do want to make it a movie. And Joe produces movies. I've talked to a couple people. They think, and I've been contacted, and I'm going to be in New York City in May at the New York Book Show. Talked to 2 different producers. Joe's kind of talking. People do think there's a story here, because it's quirky. I mean, Jesus as a woman, oh my God. And I tell you the truth, when I was writing this 5 years ago, I went to a traditional church, and I brought it to a priest, and he loved it. But he said, but can't you make him a man? I like the idea. I mean, literally. And I said, there you go. That's the problem. So though I'm sharing my goals because we all know this, right? You have to get your intention out there, and you have to let other people know, and then the network maybe works. Maybe someone here will go, hey. My friend Joan Steffens here, dear friend, she got me into this speaking. I'm here because of her. Wes also mentioned it. So it's how it works. We help each other that way through the spider web, and I think that's wonderful. That's kind of my basics. I think we got about 5, 6, 7 minutes. I would like, anybody have any questions? Sure, go ahead. Yes, sir. I would love to hear them.
I just would love to hear your opinion about what do you make of the fact that we celebrate Jesus' birth at a time that we know is not Jesus' birth, because Jesus was factually born in March. And also the other thing is we celebrate Jesus' birth with symbols that have nothing to do with the place where Jesus was born. So what do you make of all that? What is your opinion on that?
It's a great question. My opinion in that the story is, it's mythology as much as it's truth, right? The whole story of Jesus. I mean, who can say? It was written 100 years after he was passed, they say. I agree with you. And if you know your history, they have the same story in Egypt, the Pharaoh and the virgin birth, and all, they're the exact same story. And if again, history again, but all the great conquerors of history, the ones that did the largest growth would come in and let them keep their religion, whatever town they took over. Let them keep their leader, but got their tax. So to me, to me, yeah, there's no question. Who knows exactly if Jesus is an archetype of several different people? I personally believe it was something, obviously a Buddha-type person, powerful. But to answer your question, I don't know, and I don't pretend to know. It makes no sense. We know that. They're guessing more March. I agree with you. They're guessing different locations. Here's my best answer. None of that matters to me. None of that really matters to me. What matters is the simple parables. And, I love this one. Don't worry about getting fed or your job or money is my interpretation. It's the bird story. Because look at every night the birds fly and they find a nest and they get fed. And would I not love you the same way? You're going to get your needs met. Just have faith, have trust. So all the details, I'm not a detail guy. It doesn't matter if he was, I will say the same thing too. Buddha is just as important. Allah is just as important. They're prophets. How they tell the story doesn't matter. But great question. Thank you. Is it important to you? Let me ask you that. Is it important to you that it be factual as much as possible, historically?
It could be, really be seen as a mishmash of different traditions. Why not? It's not really Christian.
Yes.
The Christmas tree isn't Christian. It's different things. So why don't we just accept it as a mishmash of different things with the spirit of Jesus?
Yeah, thank you. We're on the same page. Yeah, it's a winter solstice. Christmas is the winter solstice. That's pagan. You think about pagan, there's so many traditions that are Christian that are pagan. And this maddens me. It maddens me deeply. I believe in past lives. The burning and the persecution of the witches, that whole, so much of those eras were just women that were nature-loving, they were profound, they were wise, nothing more. But the Inquisition, think of that. What happened there? Think of the sins that were perpetrated there on women and men. You got to have this or we'll cut your head off. I toured the Inquisition's torture chamber. I got chills. I think I had that happen to me. That's how I'm like, I don't even want to go in here. So, I want to leave you with this. If I ask you one thing, it's be nicer to each other. I'm saying to myself, in this holiday season, don't have to do big things. Don't have to do, rent, and you have to give, or, all the presents and all that stuff, whatever works for you. But think about that piece of paper when you walk down the street. Think about kindness to a stranger. Maybe pay it forward in a line. Buy somebody a cup of coffee. That coffee behind me, I want to pay for it. All these things you've heard. But I'm telling you, those kindnesses go the longest way. Whenever I've done something for a person in a small way, I've had letters come back. I've had people, wow, I can't remember. And this is a true story. I was working at a store my brother owned. I gave my watch to a young man, young black gentleman. It was in central area, St. Paul, kind of a poor, tough area. And he didn't have a watch. I said, well, take mine. Whatever, it's a watch. He became a lawyer. He wrote me a letter 25 years later and said how profound that experience was. I'm like, I didn't even remember it. I'm going, oh yeah, that was helped him so much. Okay, there's my example. Namaste, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Thank you for listening to my story.